A teenage boy in the heart of ancient Egypt managed to commit a legal heist. He utilized the empire's rigid property laws to buy his own mother and sister, shielding them from a lifetime of systematic abuse. This wasn't an escape from a stone dungeon. In the ancient world, prisons were built from absolute, unbreakable property laws that dictated who you were and who owned your body. Her story begins in Kush. As a young girl, she was captured during an Egyptian raid and marched across the desert. Once she hit the Nile Valley, the geography itself became a cage, a thin strip of life surrounded by miles of lethal wasteland. With the desert as an outer wall, survival depended entirely on the household that purchased her. Escaping this life would require navigating a legal labyrinth rather than scaling a fence. In a noble Egyptian estate, grooming artifacts like these served to physically dismantle a person's past. Upon arrival, the girls were shaved clean and scrubbed in daily baths, replacing their cultural identities with the polished, uniform look of household inventory. Next came the psychological conditioning. Older servants taught her how to move without sound and how to maintain the exact kneeling posture seen in this statuette. It was a process of sculpting flesh into a shape signaling total obedience. She was assigned to the bottom of the household hierarchy. She was a decorative slave, positioned below the wives and even the primary concubines, existing only as a convenience for the household's visitors. The estate replaced her name and her history with a singular function. Her childhood ended the moment the household ledger assigned her a price tag. These seeds were the primary tools of an ancient pregnancy test. Midwives would have the women squat over bowls of wheat and barley. Whichever grain sprouted first would determine the child's gender and their legal destiny. In her first pregnancy, the wheat sprouted. She gave birth to a girl who was immediately viewed as another future servant. The birth offered no protection. It simply ensured the household's cycle of exploitation would continue for another generation. Years later, during the wine-heavy festival of Hathor, the master of the house encountered her in a dark corridor. This accidental meeting led to a second pregnancy that the estate couldn't ignore. This time, the barley sprouted. When the midwives announced she was carrying a boy, the staff's behavior changed instantly. Servants who previously ignored her began to bow, and her daily labor stopped as she was now carrying a potential male heir the master could use for future political alliances. The mother now lived a dual reality. She was a protected vessel for her unborn son, while her young daughter remained an invisible laborer, already learning to weave and hide her face. Because she carried a male child, the mother was granted honey, figs, and a level of physical safety she hadn't known in decades. Her value to the estate was finally tied to something the master respected. Her daughter, however, was being trained for the exact life the mother was trying to survive. While the mother ate better food, she watched her daughter's hair being shaved, marking her entry into the world of permanent servitude. As the son grew, he was given the education of an elite. He studied under tutors and mastered the work of a scribe, learning how the empire's laws and titles were recorded on papyrus. Once the son reached his teenage years, his mother shared the reality of the household with him. She explained that his sister was being targeted by the same predatory systems that had nearly destroyed her. The son realized a terrifying truth about their status. His own future was protected by his gender and his father's recognition, but his sister's vulnerability was a permanent feature of the estate's legal structure. The son used his unique position as a recognized heir to secure his family's safety. Knowing his father valued him as a tool for future alliances, he petitioned the aging master for a specific coming-of-age gift, the legal ownership of the 2 slaves who had raised him. When the master died suddenly, the household collapsed into a scramble for property. The primary wives and their children immediately moved to claim every asset, from the gold in the chests to the people in the kitchens. The mistress attempted to seize the mother and daughter, viewing them purely as financial assets to be traded or sold to settle the estate's debts. The son produced a specific legal document he had secured years prior. It was a formal transfer of property, stamped and filed with the estate scribes, proving that the master had officially gifted the mother and sister to him. This document stopped the seizure in its tracks. By law, they were no longer part of the general estate. They were his personal property, placed entirely beyond the reach of the other heirs. He didn't keep them as property for long. He used his legal authority to grant them their freedom, moving them into a private home, where they were finally recognized as women, not inventory. The ultimate act of rebellion wasn't a violent uprising. It was a son mastering the empire's own rigid laws to turn a system of ownership into a mechanism for liberation.